There's a pattern in military history that's destroyed three world powers in the last, 600 years. And right now, in 2025, the United States is following that same pattern stage by stage, defeat by defeat. Almost like we're reading from the same playbook that led to catastrophe every single time before. In 378 AD, Rome had the most feared military on Earth. The legions were invincible. They'd conquered 3 continents. No army could stand against them. Then at the Battle of Adrianople, they suffered a single catastrophic defeat. Within 32 years, Rome was sacked. The Western Empire collapsed. 70 years later, the invincible army had become a joke. In 1940, France had the largest army in Europe. The Maginot Line was impenetrable. French generals called their military the finest in the world. Then Germany invaded. 6 weeks. That's how long it took to destroy the myth. The French army, which everyone believed was invincible, was defeated so completely that France became a puppet state overnight.
In 1979, the Soviet Union was a superpower. Nuclear weapons, the largest army on Earth, and decades of military dominance. They invaded Afghanistan, thinking it would take months. 10 years later, they retreated in humiliation. Within 2 years of that withdrawal, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. The military defeat triggered the collapse of the entire empire. 3 times, 3 military superpowers, 3 complete collapses, all following the same sequence. And here's what should terrify you. The United States military, which has dominated global conflict for 80 years, is showing every single warning sign that appeared before those 3 collapses. We're not at the beginning of the pattern. We're at stage 4 of 6, the same stage where Rome's invincibility myth was shattered. The same stage where France's army was revealed as hollow. The same stage where the Soviet Union's military reputation died in the mountains of Afghanistan. This is the story of how empires lose their military edge, how reputation carries long after capability dies, and why every warning sign says America's turn has come.
Before we go through the pattern, you need to understand what military decline actually looks like, not in theory, in practice. What does it mean when a superpower's military dies? Military collapse doesn't start with defeat on the battlefield. It starts with internal hollowing out. Budget cuts disguised as efficiency. Recruitment problems are blamed on culture. Equipment aging while procurement stalls. Training quality is declining while standards are lowered. At first, the decline is invisible. The military still has bases everywhere. It still has advanced weapons. Generals still give confident speeches. Allies still trust the guarantees, but beneath the surface, the foundation is rotting. Then comes the moment of truth, a conflict that exposes the gap between reputation and reality, a defeat that shouldn't have happened, an enemy that shouldn't have won, and suddenly the emperor has no clothes. That's when the pattern accelerates. Allies start hedging. Enemies test boundaries. Every commitment becomes a question mark. The military that once guaranteed security becomes a liability, and the empire that built itself on force projection discovers it can no longer project force.
That's not theoretical. That's what happened to Rome, France, and the Soviet Union. And it happened because they made the same mistakes we're making now. They believed their military strength was permanent. They let readiness decline while maintaining appearances. They confused reputation with capability, and they only realized the truth when it was too late to fix it. Let's look at how it actually happened 3 times, the same way. Let's start with the blueprint. Rome, 350 to 410 AD. For 400 years, the Roman legions were unstoppable. They conquered Gaul, Britain, Egypt, Judea, Greece, Spain, and North Africa. Any kingdom that challenged Rome was destroyed. The legion was the most advanced military force in the ancient world. Professional soldiers, standardized equipment, iron discipline, brilliant tactics. By 350 AD, Rome controlled everything from Scotland to Syria, 3 continents, 60 million people. The military was the foundation of that power. But underneath the reputation, The legions were dying. The military had been at its peak in 117 AD under Trajan. By 350 AD, they were 200 years into decline, but nobody wanted to admit it.
Here's what was happening internally. Rome couldn't recruit enough citizens anymore. The old system, where Roman citizens served in the legions, had broken down. Citizenship had been extended to everyone in the empire, which sounds generous, but it destroyed military culture. Why would a farmer in Egypt fight for Rome? So Rome did what every declining military does. They lowered standards. They recruited barbarians, Germanic tribes, Goths, Huns, and anyone who would fight. By 350 AD, more than half of Rome's legions were foreign mercenaries who felt no loyalty to Rome. Equipment quality declined. The old standardized gear that made legions effective was too expensive. Armor got lighter, training got shorter. Discipline weakened, but Rome's reputation held. When Rome's army marched, enemies still retreated. The memory of Roman invincibility was doing the work that actual capability used to do. Then came August 9th, 378 AD, the Battle of Adrianople. The Eastern Roman Emperor Valens faced a Gothic army in Thrace, modern-day Turkey. 410 AD, just 32 years later, Alaric the Visigoth sacked Rome. The city that hadn't been conquered in 800 years fell in 3 days. The Western Roman Empire staggered on for another 66 years, but the military was finished. By 476 AD, Rome couldn't field an army. Germanic warlords controlled everything. The empire that had been built on military dominance collapsed because the military had died. The pattern: peak strength, internal decline, hidden by reputation. First major defeat exposes reality. Cascade of defeats follows. Empire ends. Now let's jump forward 1,360 years. France, 1940. After World War I, France had the strongest military in Europe. They had fought Germany to a standstill for 4 years. They had won. French generals were celebrated. The French army was massive, well-equipped, and experienced. By 1939, France had built the Maginot Line, a fortress system on the German border that was supposed to be impenetrable. The French military strategy was based on defense, attrition, and the belief that Germany couldn't break through. The rest of Europe looked at France and saw invincibility. Britain relied on French military strength. Poland trusted French guarantees. Belgium believed French assurances. But underneath, the reputation was intact while the capability was declining. Here's what was wrong. French military doctrine hadn't evolved. They were still planning to fight World War I again. Static defense, slow mobilization, attrition warfare. They ignored the lessons of mechanized warfare. They had tanks, but they spread them out in infantry support roles instead of concentrating them.
German military theory had evolved. Blitzkrieg, fast, concentrated attacks, tanks grouped in divisions, supported by aircraft, punching through weak points and encircling enemies. Speed, surprise, coordination. France had more tanks than Germany, more men, more guns. But they had outdated tactics, a slow command structure, and rigid thinking. May 10th, 1940, Germany invaded. The world expected another long, grinding war, another 4 years of trench warfare like World War I. 6 weeks, that's how long it took. Germany didn't attack the Maginot Line. They went around it through the Ardennes forest. French command said tanks couldn't move through that terrain. They were wrong. German panzers broke through at Sedan. French defenses collapsed. Within days, Germany had cut the French and British armies in half. The British evacuated at Dunkirk. The French government fled Paris. On June 22nd, France surrendered.
6 weeks. The strongest army in Europe was destroyed in 6 weeks. Not just a single defeat, total collapse. The gap between reputation and reality was so large that when it was exposed, the entire military shattered. And here's what matters for understanding the pattern. It wasn't that Germany had better equipment.
France had comparable tanks and more men. It was that France's military doctrine, training, and command structure had decayed while their reputation remained. They'd been coasting on World War I glory for 20 years. They believed their own mythology. And when they faced an enemy that had actually innovated, they discovered their military was obsolete. France never recovered as a military power. They were liberated by America and Britain in 1944. But French military prestige was dead. To this day, France is a second-tier power that was once a superpower. The pattern again. Reputation carried long after capability declined. The first major test revealed the truth. Immediate collapse.
One more example. Soviet Union, 1979 to 1989. The Soviet military in 1979 was massive. 5 million soldiers, nuclear weapons, the largest tank force on Earth, and decades of military dominance in Eastern Europe. When the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, resistance lasted 1 day. The USSR looked invincible. America was still recovering from Vietnam. China was weak. The Soviet military was feared everywhere. Then, in December 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. The goal was simple: install a friendly communist government, stabilize the country, and withdraw within months. It should have been easy. Afghanistan was poor, divided, and technologically backward. The Soviets had tanks, helicopters, and modern weapons. The Afghan resistance had old rifles. 10 years later, the Soviets retreated in humiliation. 15,000 Soviet soldiers are dead. Hundreds of thousands of Afghans are dead. The war cost billions, and it broke the Soviet military. Here's what went wrong. The Soviet military looked strong on paper, but it was hollow. Conscription meant soldiers didn't want to be there. Morale was terrible. Drug abuse was rampant. Desertion was common. Officers were corrupt. Equipment maintenance was poor. The Soviets tried to fight a guerrilla war with conventional tactics. They bombed villages. They occupied cities, but they couldn't control the countryside. The Mujahideen, funded by America and Pakistan, adapted. They ambushed convoys. They shot down helicopters. They made the occupation unsustainable. The Soviet military couldn't win. And as the years dragged on, the war revealed everything that was wrong with the Soviet system. Corruption, incompetence, brutality that created more enemies, supply problems, and leadership failure. On February 15, 1989, the last Soviet soldier crossed the bridge out of Afghanistan. The defeat exposed that Soviet military power was a myth. The invincible army had been beaten by farmers with rifles. And once that reputation died, the empire died with it. Eastern Europe watched. If the Soviets couldn't defeat Afghanistan, how could they hold Eastern Europe?
Within 2 years, the Berlin Wall fell. The Warsaw Pact dissolved. By December 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. The pattern: military reputation intact despite internal problems. Afghanistan exposed the truth. A cascade of defeats followed. Empire collapsed. 3 times. Rome, France, USSR. 3 military superpowers, 3 collapses, all following the same sequence. And now it's happening again. Let's break down the pattern explicitly, because once you see the 6 stages, you'll understand exactly where the United States is right now. Stage 1. Peak military power. The military is genuinely dominant. Advanced technology, superior training, strong morale, and recruitment are easy. Equipment is cutting edge. Enemies fear confrontation. Allies trust guarantees. This is a real strength, not just reputation. Rome at 100 AD, France at 1918, USSR at 1945, USA at 1991.
Stage 2. Internal decline begins. The decline starts quietly. Budget cuts disguised as efficiency. Recruitment becomes harder. Standards are lowered to fill ranks. Equipment ages, but replacement is delayed. Training quality declines. Bureaucracy grows. Innovation slows. But these problems are hidden from the public. Generals claim everything is fine. Rome at 250 AD, France at 1925, USSR at 1970, USA at 2005. Stage 3. Reputation carries despite weakness. The military's reputation is still intact, but its capability has declined significantly. Enemies still respect the name, allies still trust the guarantees, but internally, leaders know there are serious problems. Readiness is questionable, morale is weak. The gap between reputation and reality is growing. Rome at 370 AD, France at 1938, USSR at 1978, USA at 2020.
Stage 4. First major defeat. Exposes reality. The military faces a test it should pass easily, and it fails. The defeat might be a single battle or a failed campaign, but it reveals the truth. The invincible military isn't invincible. The gap between reputation and reality is exposed. Allies question guarantees. Enemies see weakness. The reputation that was carried for decades dies overnight. Rome at 378 AD, Adrianople. France at 1940, France was invaded. USSR in 1989, Afghanistan withdrawal. USA in 2021, Afghanistan withdrawal.
Stage 5. Cascade of defeats. Allies abandon. After the first major defeat, others follow. Each defeat is worse than the last. Allies hedge. Some switch sides. Enemies test boundaries everywhere. The military, once feared, becomes a question mark. Can they defend anything? Guarantees become worthless. The empire's sphere of influence shrinks rapidly. Rome at 400 to 450 AD, multiple sacks. France, immediately after 1940, the empire couldn't hold. USSR from 1989 to 1991, Eastern Europe left.
Stage 6. The empire cannot project power. The military is too weak to defend the empire's interests. Foreign bases close, allies leave, enemies act without fear. The empire retreats to its core territory. The era of dominance is over. The superpower becomes a regional power or collapses entirely. Rome at 476 AD. France has been permanently after World War II. USSR in 1991. USA in the future. 6 stages. 3 empires followed them completely. Rome took 100 years from stage 4 to stage 6. France took 1 year. The USSR took 2 years. Each collapsed faster than the last. The pattern is clear. The sequence is identical. And the United States is at stage 4 right now. Let me show you why. The evidence is overwhelming.
Stage 1 was 1991, the Gulf War. The U.S. military destroyed the 4th largest army on Earth in 100 hours. Precision weapons, overwhelming air power, total dominance. That was peak American military power. The world had never seen anything like it. America could fight 2 major wars simultaneously and win both. That was the doctrine. That was the capability. That was stage 1. Stage 2 started quietly around 2005. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars were grinding on. The military was stretched thin. Equipment was wearing out faster than it could be replaced. The defense budget was massive, but most of it went to operations, not modernization. F-22 production was cut short. The Navy shrank from 600 ships to under 300. The Army downsized, but everyone said it was fine. We were getting more efficient. Technology was improving. Quality over quantity.
By 2020, we'd reached stage 3. The American military's reputation was still intact. China didn't challenge us directly. Russia was careful. Our allies still trusted our security guarantees. NATO believed America would defend them. Japan and South Korea relied on American protection. Taiwan trusted we'd intervene if China invaded. But internally, the problems were piling up.
Recruitment was getting harder, standards were being lowered, the equipment was aging. The B-52 bombers were still flying. Entered service in 1955. That's 70 years ago. We're flying bombers that are older than most pilots' grandparents. The Navy had shrunk to 290 ships, the smallest since before World War I, while China's Navy had grown to over 350 ships. The Army was cutting active duty strength, but its reputation held. Everyone still believed American military power was unmatched.
Then came August 2021. 20 years, $2 trillion. The most advanced military on Earth versus the Taliban, a force with no air force, no navy, no satellites, no advanced weapons. We trained the Afghan military for 2 decades. We equipped them. We funded them. We told the world they could hold the country. The Taliban took over in 11 days. 11 days. The Afghan military we spent 20 years building collapsed immediately. The Taliban entered Kabul on August 15th. The scenes at the airport were chaotic. Afghans falling from planes. The American military is conducting a panicked evacuation. 13 U.S. service members were killed in a suicide bombing. The last C-17 took off on August 30th, leaving behind billions in equipment, helicopters, armored vehicles, weapons, night vision goggles. We armed the Taliban with more advanced equipment than most of our allies have.
This was stage 4. This was America's Adrianople, our moment where the gap between reputation and reality was exposed. We couldn't defeat the Taliban. 20 years and we lost. The most powerful military in history was beaten by an insurgency with rifles and improvised explosives. And just like Rome after Adrianople, just like France after 1940, just like the USSR after Afghanistan, the world took notice. China watched, Russia watched, Iran watched, and they saw weakness. But it's not just Afghanistan. The warning signs are everywhere.
Let's go through them, because every single indicator that appeared before Rome, France, and the USSR's military collapses is flashing red for America right now. Recruitment crisis. The U.S. military is missing recruitment targets by 25%. Equipment aging. The B-52 bombers are from the 1950s. The Minuteman III nuclear missiles are from 1970. The average age of Air Force aircraft is 28 years, the oldest in history. Ships are being kept in service decades past their design life. The USS Nimitz aircraft carrier is 48 years old and still deployed. Procurement broken. We're not replacing equipment fast enough. The F-35 program is 15 years late and $183 billion over budget and still has problems. Meanwhile, China is building ships faster than we can count them. 3 carriers launched in the time it took us to build 1.
Force structure shrinking. Navy at 290 ships. China over 350. Attack submarines. U.S. 49, China 66 and growing. Army down from 566,000 in 2010 to 452,000 today. The Air Force is smaller than at any point since its creation. Readiness problems. Only 50% of Air Force fighters are mission capable. Navy ships are spending less time at sea due to maintenance backlogs. Training hours cut. The military is less ready than at any point since the 1970s. Budget problems disguised. $800 billion defense budget, but most spent on personnel, benefits, and operations. Only 20% goes to procurement and modernization. Forces are spread thin worldwide. Technological edge eroding. China has hypersonic missiles and Russia has GPS jamming technology. Drones shot down in Ukraine, advantage disappearing. Morale and political problems. Suicide rates record high. Retention is a problem. Culture wars inside the military. Political divisions affecting unit cohesion.
And here's the most critical indicator. Reputation is still carrying us. Our allies still trust American guarantees, but they're starting to hedge. Saudi Arabia is making deals with China. The UAE is buying Russian weapons. South Korea is developing its own nuclear deterrent. Europe is talking about strategic autonomy. The reputation that kept our enemies cautious for 80 years is cracking. Once it breaks completely, we enter stage 5, the cascade. Enemies will test us everywhere simultaneously. China on Taiwan, Russia in Ukraine or the Baltics, Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, North Korea acting against South Korea. America can't respond to all of it. Insufficient ships, planes, soldiers, or stockpiles. War game simulations show losses in Taiwan, not because China is stronger, but because we can't deploy enough forces fast enough. Once a single carrier is lost, the illusion of naval dominance dies.
This is the pattern in real time. We are at stage 4. Afghanistan was our Adrianople, the moment the world saw that American military might is no longer absolute. Stage 5 is coming. Multiple challenges, allies abandoning security guarantees, enemies acting without fear, and the empire discovering it cannot defend all commitments. Timeline. Rome took 32 years from Adrianople to the sack. The USSR took 2 years from Afghanistan to collapse. France took 6 weeks from invasion to surrender. Each collapse is faster than the last because the world moves faster. Information spreads instantly and enemies coordinate globally.
How long does America have? Maybe 5 years, maybe 10. Once stage 5 starts, stage 6 comes quickly. Bases closed, commitments abandoned, military retreats to defending the homeland. The era of American global dominance ends. This isn't inevitable, but stopping it requires something no declining military power has ever done. Admit the problem, accept reality, and fundamentally restructure before collapse. Rome didn't, France didn't, USSR didn't. They all believed reputation would carry them. They all thought they were different. They all discovered they weren't. The pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. It's math. You can't maintain a global empire when your military is hollowing out. You can't project power everywhere with a shrinking force. You can't sustain readiness when equipment ages and recruitment fails. You can't rely on a reputation once proven false.
3 times, this pattern destroyed military superpowers: Rome, France, USSR. Each believed their military was permanent. Each ignored warning signs. Each collapsed when reality caught up. The United States is following the same pattern: same warning signs, same denial, same trajectory. Stage 4 of sex. Afghanistan was our moment of truth. Stage 5 is the cascade. Stage 6 is the end of American military dominance. The question isn't whether this happens. The pattern says it does. The question is how fast and whether anyone accepts reality before it's too late. If this gave you a different perspective to understand where American power actually stands, subscribe to Histo Mirror, because when Stage 5 starts, when the cascade begins, you'll want to understand what happened and why.